To see the fully uncut version of this video, head over to patreon.com/Jonjo Lyons.
What's that like to live deliciously? Chaos reigns.
Please don't scream.
Nah, Sid, don't you blame the movies. Movies don't create psychos. Movies make psychos more creative.
What's happening? My name is Jonjo Lyons, and today I'm here to present to you my review for Her Name Was Torment. Written and directed by Dustin Mills, Her Name Was Torment stars... all it is. Suspected of committing 27 murders, Patient 394 takes us deep into her perverted realm of mutilation, suffering, and otherworldly guidance. Will the world believe the grim testimony of a loyal servant whose name was Torment? I don't know about you, but I'm really enjoying getting back to the core values of the channel. Reviewing super dark, ultra-violent movies that make little to no sense. Unless, of course, the whole thing has a really dull voiceover that both over-explains and under-explains everything that's going on. Madness of Manny. Well, we're back at it this week with a movie that's not only absolutely brutal, but also packed to the gills with creativity. What we've got here is a fun little torture movie that adds in those interview room segments that fans of true crime find so entertaining, myself included. Add on top of that God, his angels, and some of the most entertaining editing that I've seen in a really long time, and you're in for one hell of a ride. I also love the title. Her Name Was Torment. Who is she? My mum? It can't be my dad. Her name is Sean, and she recently transitioned from being a terrible father to a terrible artist. With a mohawk. Who's addicted to c***. Also, Dad, if you're watching, I got you a Christmas gift. I made it myself. Why won't you answer my calls? And before we go any further, let me just take a quick moment to tell you about this week's sponsor. Me! As you can imagine, YouTube does not like my videos at all, hence why I have to censor them as much as I do. Just in case you weren't aware, every video that I release has to go through multiple edits. 9 times out of 10, it gets instantly age restricted, and then I have to edit it down to no ads, and then edit it further down to hopefully get some ads. And even then, still they get refused. Last week's review for Madness of Many got no ads, and then weeks later, out of the blue, the Necrophiles got their ads taken away, even after being deemed suitable, which means that they can pretty much do whatever they like, whenever they like. As sad as it is, I can't function in normal society and rely solely on these videos and the Patreon to pay my rent, which, by the way, I'm still not covering. So yeah, when I ask you to join the Patreon, it isn't because I want extra money to pay for the 25th anniversary Scream costume, which I so desperately want. It's genuinely to keep a roof over my head and enable me to continue to make this content. So if you like the videos, if you enjoy jokes, and if you absolutely despise your parents and the mess of a human being they raised you to be, head over to patreon.com/Jonjo Lyons. You can gain access to everything for $1, and there isn't a day that goes by that I don't regret not making it too. There's a lesson for you in understanding your self-worth, all of my friends out there with low self-esteem. So yeah, in light of the fact that this video has almost certainly been demonetized, head over to patreon.com/Jonjo Lyons. Anyway, I hate to keep Torment waiting, so let's not waste any more time. Get ready to meet an angel with a face like a nightmare and sent straight from heaven. This is Her Name Was Torment. The movie begins with someone whispering, "It is his will, and his will is divine and perfect," over a black screen.
It's his will, and his will is divine and perfect.
Cut to the POV of someone leaving their house. They spot this fella who stops to have a look before continuing on his way. The POV then follows him through the neighborhood, eventually running up to him at his apartment door. Cut to the title card as we hear a doctor start a recording and describe patient 394, a female roughly 30 years old. Admitted November 19th, 2013. No name on record, no alias, and they've been unable to identify her based on fingerprints or dental records. She either doesn't remember who she is or isn't willing to tell them. Suspected of 27 murders but deemed unfit to stand trial by a court-appointed psychiatrist. She has psychotic tendencies and is completely disconnected from reality and morality. Exhibits antisocial behavior, is prone to panic attacks, chronic insomnia, and is a necrophile. Are you just reading my dad's Tinder profile? She has facial scars that look like botched surgery that are possibly self-inflicted, and tattoos. 24 of her victims could not be identified. No next of kin. Every victim was either mutilated or completely dissected, or, to be more specific, vivisected. Cause of death in nearly all cases was blood loss, and they've not been able to determine a motive of any kind. Cut to an absolutely pants-shittingly horrible image of a girl with no eyes reaching out to us, and then to this room where the woman is being questioned. And check out what happens when they ask her what her name is.
Can you tell me your name?
This happens a few times as the doctor presses her on the question, and I've got to say, I f***ing love it. The flash being so quick and the font being so bold just makes it seem super aggressive to me and immediately builds tension. It's a really neat little touch, and the only thing that annoys me about it is the fact that I didn't think of it first. So, fuck you, Dustin. She says she doesn't know what her name is, and they move on to why she's here. She says it's because they found them. The doctor then asks if she understands what she did, and the woman, who I guess we'll call Torment, says yes.
You know you killed those people?
Cut to the POV of a victim as Torment stands half nude in front of us wearing a creepy mask. A mask that's sort of giving me a Leslie Vernon vibe? What do you think? Anyway, it's creepy as fuck. She pops on a plastic apron as the victim looks down to see they've been restrained. She then steps towards him and inspects his head as we catch a quick glimpse of another figure sitting on the sofa next to them. Torment then draws for the pliers and starts removing teeth. The victim resists, so Torment pulls out a box cutter and gives him a little nick on the neck, a taste of how his subordination will be received if he continues. In light of this, the victim reconsiders and willingly opens his mouth. Cut to Torment popping the teeth in the test tube as the victim grabs the box cutter she left behind. When she returns, he tries to defend himself with it with little effect, catching a slap and having it taken back off him. She then gets her pliers out once more and goes after his fingernails. Jesus Lord, that's rough. With the nails removed, she then puts away the pliers and inspects her work, then pops them in a jar. Cut back to the interview room as the doctor narrates. He says their initial diagnosis of Torment's paraphilia was incorrect, as after further analysis it seems that she's not in fact sexually aroused by corpses.
Necrophiliacs are generally not monogamous.
He goes on to say that they have been unable to identify the male corpse they found with her, and she refuses to give any further details, only referring to the body as him and refusing to talk about the subject any further.
Observing from a basic human perspective, it isn't difficult to see that she misses him desperately.
He adds that he pities her and does not believe she's a monster. She's sick, she's broken, and he hopes through these interviews he can find out what broke her. Cut back to the victim as he watches Torment approach the man on the sofa. And check out the switch in style here. Now suddenly we're in colour with VHS static and sound. So does this mean that Torment actually recorded her murders? We'll get to that later. We're also bearing witness to Torment as she... How do I put this without upsetting YouTube? As she fucks the corpse. Which the victim doesn't seem to be a fan of. I say she's fucking the corpse, but she's not really, even though he does still have his mummified cock and balls attached. No, she's more hovering over him, rubbing and mock kissing him. That is, of course, until she starts giving herself a little strum. Oh, sorry, give me a second. I've just got to add to the jar. Oh, fuck. Oh. Oh, that's pungent. Anyway, she finally arrives and we cut back to the interview. The doctor again asks if she understands what she did and she says yes. He then says she killed those people, but Torment says no.
No? You didn't kill them?
I killed them. They're not people.
The doctor then asks what they were and she says she doesn't know, but they weren't people.
But you killed them?
Yes. Dissected, disassembled, disposed.
Cut back to Torment and the victim as she sparks up a cigarette. Ooh, I tell ya, there is nothing more satisfying than that just f***ed a dead body cigarette. Absolute bliss. She stands, walks over to the victim and makes him smell her fingers before shoving them down his throat. I fail to understand what his problem with that is, but whatever. She then pops her underwear and gear back on, revealing her next instrument of sensation, a knitting needle. Torment waggles it for him, then grabs him by the hair, takes aim and shoves it deep into his ear, puncturing his eardrum. She then pulls it out with the sound dropping as the victim shakes in pain. Torment then snips the end of the needle off and sticks it in another test tube before heading back over to the victim and removing her mask. You know, I was wondering how long it'd take before we got some sped up footage like this. I was actually rating the movie for not having to resort to that effect. Never mind. Cut back to the interview room as Torment is asked why she killed them. She becomes visibly nervous, and when asked what's wrong, she says she's scared, all the while images of the eyeless woman from the start flash up. The doctor tells Torment she's safe here, but she doesn't seem convinced. She says he can see me, and the doctor asks who can see her, to which he responds, up there. The Overseer. The doctor asks who the Overseer is, and again she begins to grab at her shirt. He tells her she's safe and they want to help her before asking again who the Overseer is.
Who is the Overseer?
Kill me! I've been bad. He'll kill me!
Who's gonna kill you?
Cut to the victim chilling in his chair as Torment paces. We see his blue eyes and the dark eyes of Torment when everything snaps to color and Torment rips the man's eye out with a spoon. Fucking hell, Torment, why a spoon?
It's dull, you twit. It'll hurt more.
Torment then rips the last bit of eye tendril out with pliers and places the eye in a jar. Cut back to the interview room as the doctor wishes Torment a good morning and asks how she's doing today, getting no response. He then says he wants to talk about what happened to her face. He says he's never seen scars like that and asks if she's in pain, to which she answers, always. He asks what happened to her and she says the angels took her and changed her. Pulled her apart and they didn't know how to put her back together. He asks why they took her apart and she says she needed to change but couldn't, so they broke her apart and she changed. He asks how she changed and she says she can see them now. The doctor then asks to know more about the angels and what they're like. Torment says they're beautiful but not like we've seen in pictures. They're surrounded by light. Warm light. We then see one close up and it seems to be the same woman we saw in the opening. The doctor then asks if they serve the Overseer and she confirms they do. Everybody does. Cut to Torment explaining her methods in the most terrifying way possible.
Always dissect, disassemble, dispose.
She says the angels need them, that they're a puzzle, the hardest puzzle. How do they work? Why do they work? Who made them? God needs to know.
God gave me sight. It's His will, and His will is divine and perfect.
Cut back to the victim as Torment takes the box cutter to his lips. That's another shot that I fucking love. I think that would make an awesome painting. She then gets out a small pair of scissors and starts cutting into the man's face, removing chunks of flesh and setting them down. She then steps back and admires her work and we get to see what she's done. She's removed his lips completely. Good lord. Would you still fuck that mouth? Answers in the comments. The lips then go in the jar with the eye and we get a close-up of the man's mutilated face as the doctor speaks in voiceover. He says Torment seems to believe that she's motivated by these entities which seem to be religious in nature, the Overseer and the angels. She either created these entities herself or they're real. Not real angels but based on real people when she's so damaged she's beyond rational comprehension of who they are. He also says he doesn't believe she acted alone on every murder, as out of the 27 victims, 24 couldn't be identified but 3 were. And this is a clear break from her modus operandi. Cut back to the victim once again as Torment cuts him mostly free of his bindings. She then slashes open his stomach with the box cutter, under which she puts a bucket. She then pulls his guts out and fills it. Torment then places the bucket with the rest of her prizes, arranges them, and bows. Whoa, hold on. The jar's vanished. So, the angels are real. Cut to the overseer. Cut to Torment as she removes her clothes, jumps in the shower and washes the blood from her flesh, as in other shots we see her washing her tools in the same way. She then gets dressed and we cut to her eating cereal. The credits then start to roll when we cut back to the interview. The doctor asks if she acted alone and Torment doesn't want to answer. He says they found a lot of bodies and asks if she killed them all herself. Torment says she can't tell him because she's scared, and the doctor reassures her again she's safe. Torment then says sometimes she helped. The doctor asks who she is and Torment says sometimes sister helped her, as the word agony flashes up on the screen.
Sometimes sister helped.
Your sister?
Sister.
Do you know her name?
The end! Well, I can't remember the last time I was this excited to see a sequel to an extreme horror movie. It's gonna be shit, innit? Her Name Was Torment is another low-budget, independent, extreme horror movie where the bulk of the runtime is spent watching one character mutilate another, something we've seen multiple times on the channel already. What sets this film apart from the others like Snuff 102 is how insanely creative the filmmaker is being here. Almost every shot has some sort of effect or flourish meant to either enhance the horrific experience or add to the main character, and watching the filmmaker find new ways to present his art to me as it went on was a real treat. As I said, the story here is super simple as we watch Torment slowly take the victim apart. The torture scenes are intercut with interview scenes made up to look like real life interviews you might find in a true crime documentary, and that's another aspect that I love. The added detail of having her face blurred and her voice distorted here adds to the realism of these segments while also jumping up the creep factor. We never get to see what these angels did to her face, but from the doctor's description it's awful, and I'm so glad that with all the gore we do get to see, her face is never shown. All this realism is then thrown out the window at the end when the jars disappear. Does this mean Torment has been telling the truth the entire time, or is this just what she imagines happens at the end of every killing? Seeing as these moments are presented as if they're being filmed, it would suggest that they're vanishing for real, but I guess we're not supposed to know for sure. Speaking of Torment filming her crimes, why would she do that unless she wanted to relive them? In the interview room, she acts as if she's scared, that this is something she needs to do and presumably doesn't enjoy, but that testimony is in stark contrast to what we witness on the tapes. When she's got the mask on, Torment seems to revel in the brutality she's subjecting her victim to. Not to mention her little break with Mr. Skeleton, who, by the way, we never actually find out the identity of. Who is him? If the angels aren't real, I'd venture to say that he was the person she would later mythologize into the Overseer. The person who transformed her into this brainwashed psychotic murderer. If they are real, on the other hand, he could possibly be somebody who was important to her prior to her transformation. A partner who loved her and she was forced to kill by the Overseer but couldn't bear to part with. Hopefully we find out in the sequel. That's a plot thread that I genuinely want to know more about. The performances are great as well. The Doctor voiceover is done really well, as is Torment in the interview, and the torture room acting is just as good. Torment really feels like two completely different people in those scenarios. And also, props to the guy playing the victim. That can't have been a fun shoot, especially by the end being caked in all that latex and fake blood. In terms of the gore, it's pretty good for a low budget movie, but not exactly mind-blowing. We get some simple do-it-yourself-at-home effects that do the job for the most part, but really the real star here is the presentation. The editing in this film is so good. The words flashing up on screen, the colour and overlay changes, the sound design, all of it is absolutely top-notch. The sound of the eye being dug out of the victim's face was noticeably poor, but aside from that, this was the most entertaining aspect of the film for me. The filmmaker goes for so many different stylistic choices, I wouldn't be surprised if some might think he overdid it, but for me, I found it incredibly impressive. All in all, I really enjoyed Her Name Was Torment. In the short 50-minute runtime, Dustin Mills somehow manages to present us with a brand new horror icon with enough lore behind them and questions still up in the air that I could easily see multiple sequels coming out of it. It's a short, snappy example of how things are done, and I'd love to see what this guy could do with a bigger budget. It's a glowing recommendation from me, and I cannot wait to meet Sister Agony. So that was my review for Her Name Was Torment. What do you lot think? I really enjoyed this one, and I feel like it left us with a lot of questions that will hopefully be answered in part 2, which I'll be reviewing very soon depending on how well this video does. Oh, and I also just want to apologise to future me having to edit this for YouTube. Not only is this one violent as f***, but Torment spends pretty much the entire film naked. Speaking of which, if you want to see Torment bang that corpse completely uncut and early, head over to patreon.com/Jonjo Lyons. There you can find the uncut reviews, Patreon exclusive reviews, slasher comic breakdowns, behind the scenes stuff, and the Discord. And all that can be yours for as little as $1 a month. You can pledge more, I really appreciate it, as it's the holiday season, and I'm hoping that being somewhat financially successful will help me not on Christmas Day, as I sit alone in this room editing the next video. But yeah, that's patreon.com/Jonjo Lyons. See you there. So that's it for another week. Like the video, leave a comment, and click subscribe if you haven't already. My name's Jonjo Lyons, and at what point do you think the victim finally accepted that Torment wasn't gonna fuck him? Probably around the time the bucket came out. He's sitting there with no lips like, maybe now? Just the tip? Poor f***.